Thank you for joining us for our second segment of our True Talk Thursday podcast, where we are discussing America's educational rescue plan. Don't forget, if you like what you hear and want to learn more about other topics within the realm of education, then subscribe below or tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. I'll turn to Maria now to take it away.
Yeah, so guys, we were talking about how, whether if it's ambitious enough or, is it too ambitious on this plan? And about these bold steps that we need to take in the specifics of what's being outlined in it, right? And so, what is the reality then when it comes down to this plan? What's the likelihood of it actually becoming a reality so that we can start to see some of this, tease out?
I don't know. I think Philip has more experience when it comes into the Hill and what's going to happen politically, right into like the votes and the members and the majorities and the compromise in the Senate being split 50-50 and Kamala Harris, our vice president, having the decisive vote. What I can tell you from being in the classrooms, being with the parents and the teachers, it's that people are not connected with that directly, saying, "Oh, this is going to pass," and we're going to have better opening of the schools. People just worry what Maria was mentioning before, which is, well, if this 1.9 trillion passes, where is my check, right? That's what people are thinking. People are thinking, if this package passes, are we going to vaccine the teachers and move them up on the ladder as another conversation, which is making them as essential as they are, and we all could agree to that. They were not put in the first category. 55 and older and other individuals that we know are more at risk should be on that line. But teachers are exposed to kids every day, and those kids go to different households every day. So they're supposed to be in first in the line. But I think that the political thing, the political game, I'm going to leave it for Philippe, who leaves it, and Breed said. But I think that from the community itself, and me driving programming to students and being with parents and teachers, the concern is not if the bill passes, Maria. I think it is more about what is the immediate impact it has, and people's just thinking about checks and vaccinations, and some of them, as you mentioned, they not going to get themselves vaccinated until they see if this actually is going to work out. And we could talk more about that if we're going to have some space, but I'm going to let Philippe to talk about the politics.
Sure. So, I think that there is a good chance for a lot of this to pass the Congress. I think that it is important for us to remember that, while Democrats have control of the White House and the Congress, in the Senate, they only have 50 votes, and most legislation really needs 60 votes to pass the Senate because of the filibuster.
Right.
There is a procedural mechanism that can be used called budget reconciliation that allows that allows some types of policy around federal revenue and federal expenditures to pass with just 50 votes. But it is, and so in that situation, and that's really what gives me some level of optimism for something along these lines to pass. It wouldn't include everything that's in the plan, but I think that it can include much of what's in the plan. Now that said, it took Congress months to get the last COVID package passed, when I think a lot of us thought it was going to take a lot less time. Now, obviously, DC is a very different place on January 21st, 2021, than it was on December 31st, right? But I think that it's really important for education advocates to be educating their members of Congress about the needs facing students and facing educators, facing schools, because there are a lot of priorities, and it's really taken quite a bit of time to make education a priority. I'll give you one example of this. Typically, many think, oh, education, Democrats, Democrats value education. Democrats will spend the money on education. Well, if you go back in time, not that far, a matter of months, when Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi put out her first HEROES Act, the education spending in that bill really wasn't that much. In fact, a couple of weeks later, when Senate Republicans put out their bill, they had more in there for education than in Pelosi's bill. And then in the bill that passed in December, it actually had less money than what was in the Senate Republican bill. So it's really important for education advocates to be educating their members of Congress about the needs facing students and teachers on the vaccination side, on the side of just preparing the school building, and on the learning loss that students are facing. And I think one of the critical issues that's missing from the minds of policymakers right now is that one, I don't think that we have a proper understanding of the learning loss that's taking place, and I think it's much more severe than what we want to admit. And two, it's going to take us much longer to address the learning loss than what anyone wants to think about. Like we're going to be working on addressing COVID learning loss for years, not months, but years. And we're not necessarily thinking about that long term because we're trying to just get through day to day, try to open schools. But I think that the policymakers really need to be thinking about this be thinking about the long-term solution here, which does not mean going back to business as usual. Business as usual, what we were, our education system going into COVID-19, we had these huge opportunity and achievement gaps. Going back to business as usual isn't going to solve gaps that are even bigger.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with you that today was yesterday and today was conference day for ALAS. We put on an education conclave and specifically to address and talk about mitigating learning loss. And it was interesting, the speakers that we had, that they brought in a different perspective. Now, we're all familiar of the devastation of Katrina and what happened there. And that was 15 years ago. And so we have data, we have researchers who studied that from the moment it happened and followed those kids for 15 years. So we know what that loss can do. And I don't know about you, but for all the people on the planet, one, we're supposed to be the most richest and the most knowledgeable folks. And for us to just fall back on stuff we already know has happened, it just boggles. It boggles my mind. Why can't we take what we know already and start to push so that we don't sit back and say, we don't know, we need to take more, we need to test, we need to follow more. No, we've already done that. And you're right, because I think about, we put in 9 months already into this. And what are we doing that's actually accelerating? Because that is a different perspective, is to accelerate. Because there are kids that are doing well. There are kids that aren't. So how do we shore up and really get down to the nitty gritty of being able to address the kids that are the most marginalized oftentimes? And as you all both mentioned, they're in the communities where we have seen schools be utilized as childcare so that people can go to work. I mean, let's just put it out there. And so now it's like, if we're trying to restart our economy, we're trying to get our businesses back up and running, our kids have to go somewhere. They don't have the luxury of staying at home. So it's like all of these variables, right, that come into play. And there's not a one quick answer. So when we look at this plan and we see, I don't want to say gaps, but maybe they're intentional so that local communities can be able to address the issues they have. But there should be some overarching areas where the feds are really championing it. like E-rate. That's a fundamental, tool of operation. I don't care if you're a kid or if you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That is an overarching necessary tool. And so I appreciate the fact that, you're talking about the likelihood of this becoming a reality, to start to get jumpstart what we need to do. So, all of this, we talked about how it has impact. And I know, John, you alluded to this a couple of questions ago. So what does, and I changed John Q. Public to Juan Q. Public, what does Juan Q. Public need to know about the plan and its impact? Do you really think that they, like John said, I don't really care about this, that, and the other. What I do care is I just need that $1,400 check. I need to know when I'm going to get back to work. I need to know when it's going to be safe for my kids to go back to school. And I need to know who is at the front of the line for this vaccine. And I need to know what the effects are of this vaccine. So what are your thoughts about what does Juan Q. Public need to know about the plan and the impact?
I think Juan is my compadre, so it's like
my tío.
No, I wanted to say something, and I'm going to be brief because I already touched upon this. So I'll let Philippe give a step to it. But I think that what you mentioned before, it's true. And we're going to see a long-lasting effect. But we have never transitioned into online the way that we did, and the aggressive approach that we took to, we all go into Canvas, we all go into your learning modules. This is what we're doing. And I think that the experiment during the first 7 months of the pandemic also shows that there is parents that now seeing oh, my kid was learning with me for 2 months and he knows how to read. And now we went back into school and he started again with the ABCs. And but I was teaching him how to add, and now he's going back into the 1 through 10. People now asking, is this system working? Is this system working for me? So connecting to your question, the other question that you just asked is just people are also, I think that we awaken that monster, which is parents. I do believe the parents now are well, hold on. My kid is better online than in person, or my kid is better to be in the classroom because he needs attention and he needs a teacher. So I think that we are really starting a conversation about the diversity of ways of learning that we have never really put attention to. And it is so important that we start thinking about it in a way that is disruptive. And I love that about bold ideas, because we need bold ideas to move this forward. And we need to make sure the parents know that they are the key into all this. Mm-hmm. Parents are the most important stakeholder in all these conversations. Because if parents like me, and I put myself into this, and with this I finish this point, is parents like me that had a 5-year-old getting into kindergarten, had a great pre-K program, learning how to read, and then got into K and he was learning the ABCs. For me as a parent was frustrated. And it was so many other parents in our districts and around the nation that were feeling the same way. And now they're exploring full online programs for the kids, or they're looking into Montessori programs, or they're looking into innovative ways. And if public schools don't wake up and federal government don't put the investment where they need to put it, that person, that Juan Q, it's not going to really take their kid to the public school. It's going to look into how I'm going to find a way to disrupt this system, because we have done it in the past in other industries. We're going to disrupt it. And then, the $1,400 and the rest, I think that's where people is worrying about. But a lot of people, it's with this bug in their mind, my kid is doing fine or he's not doing good, but people is getting to ask and question the system, which is good.
I let me agree with you, John. And for Juan Q. Public, I think that Juan and Juanita
There you go. I love
There you
it.
go.
It's
Both
called
need to know.
equal.
That's right. Ellos necesitan saber que, that, the plan, I think, is necessary. It's also not sufficient. And we've talked about some of the ways that it's not sufficient in terms of different policies that could be instituted. But I think, John, that you're exactly right, that from the education perspective, part of the reason why it's insufficient is just because there's only so much that policy can do, that we really need to use this moment to reimagine how we educate our students. And John, you mentioned the issues from pre-K to kindergarten. I'll take a stab at looking at high school to college. Right now, the way that we have our system set up, where the economy really demands post-secondary education, but compulsory education ends at high school. That is the huge disconnect, and it makes no sense.
Definitely.
And under COVID-19, we're seeing huge drops in enrollment for college. Last year, we saw an increase in freshman enrollment in college for Latinos. And this year, we saw nearly a 20% drop. And part of the reason why we have this drop is because we have two separate systems. We have K-12, we have higher ed, and it's just logical that if you have a platform here and you have a platform there and there's a gap between them, some kids are gonna drop through it as you're trying to make the leap.
Yep.
And so we need to close that gap. So I'm hoping that that out of COVID-19, we will see a restructuring of things. I think one, the personalization piece, John, that you're mentioning, it's so obvious to parents. Like you said, I've got 3 kids. I've got a 15-year-old, I've got a 12-year-old, and I've got a 5-year-old. And they each learn really differently. My 15-year-old, she's in hybrid school. She's okay with the virtual learning, and with the combination of the virtual learning and the in-person learning, it's working for her. My 12-year-old, when she was virtual, it was a disaster, and I moved her schools. And it's virtual learning, there was no learning. It was not a thing. So I think that the parents, we need to remind ourselves as parents that we need to create the demand for a system that really personalizes education. And then systemically, I think we need to do things like change what high school and higher ed look like. We need, dual enrollment is the microcosm of this, where students earn college credit while they're in high school. There's actually a bill that was introduced in the last session of Congress, and it'll be introduced in this session, called the Fast Track to and Through College Act. And the idea behind this piece of legislation is that students should have the opportunity to complete their freshman year of college before they ever set foot on a college campus. And if you think about it, one, the data shows that if you start early, you're more likely to complete. And considering our college completion data is so poor, we need to give kids every chance that they can to complete college, but it'll take less time, and less time means less money. So you're more likely to get better outcomes, and it's likely to be less expensive. What more could you ask for? So so I definitely think that we need to be using COVID-19 as a way to restructure how we think about education.
And I will add something to this, Mary. I know we're running out of time, but I completely agree with Philip. And I will add something else, which is, let's start going away from the idea that every kid has to go to college and start looking into our technology, our technical education places. Let's talk about kids taking a break. I mean, we give them so much stress about you have to go to college, There is kids that I see when I go to my programs in the foundation where they're stressed, they don't know, they really don't. And they need to find out their call. And when you look into successful people, they said, it took me so many years to really find out what I was doing, what I wanted to do in my career. And so we have to give them opportunities to do certifications, to do technical careers, to do boot camps when it comes into technology, really famous now. And I will tell you, people right now, those drops into admissions in colleges is because people found things like Coursera again, or other platforms. I'm not here to talk, they're not paying me to say Coursera here, but there's other programs out there where kids and families found out like, oh, I could get this certification and start really digging into what I'm really good at. So I think that we have to just deconstruct this conversations that we having about every person who graduates from college is going to be successful. Yes, that is partly true, but every kid that graduates from a certification is also successful. Every kid that gets into a technical school and it graduates is successful. Every kid that finishes something after high school is successful. And we have to just help them to find their call so they will thrive, because our kids in our educational system are incredible, from Black, brown, Asian, you name the background they come from. They're all talented. They all have different things to give to the communities. And with this last thing, I will finish, I promise. It's that when I went to New York many years ago, I will say 12 years ago, I went to a high school where they actually color code all the classrooms by the way that the kids learn. So there was yellow for listeners, there was blue for people who like by visuals, and it was like black for something else. They all got color coded, and the teachers were teaching the way that the kids were absorbing information. If we support programs that are innovating our classrooms like that, and there is teachers that are doing incredible things and we don't support them enough, I think that is when we're going to start changing the conversation about if putting $1 trillion in our schools is good or not. I think that is more about giving it a chance to these innovative ideas we have out there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of conversation that I've been just striving for, because it isn't a it's not a this part needs to change. It is a time in our history that we cannot turn a blind eye of what needs to happen differently. Our evolution in how we educate is right now. It's happening right now. So we got to stop bucking the system and start really imploding it. There have been pushers all along. We have pockets of excellence, but those pockets do not serve all of our kids. And so with that, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'm going to ask a couple more questions. We're going to wrap it up.
Hey there, and don't forget, if you like what you hear and want to gain some more insight into what school districts are facing now, then tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or subscribe below. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great night.